Fast-breaking developments in the coronavirus emergency in the U.S. and around the world.
Every American has a role to play in defending our nation from this invisible, horrible enemy.
Many of us are frustrated with the nearly 80 million Americans who are still not vaccinated, even though the vaccine is safe.
I'm upset by the whole thing. We could talk about that for a long time.
I mean, she just walked away from that shot and almost didn't walk anymore.
They tell you this will spare you from severe illness and death, both of which are false claims.
I can't even. I play tennis 3 times a week. My tennis coach nicknamed me Tigger because I bounced up and down all the time. That was her love. She taught school for many years, and she retired and wanted to play tennis.
She was very active with just everything in her life. The children, the grandchildren, moving around. I sometimes called her whenever she cleaned the house the tornado because stay out of her way, because when she wanted to do something, she'd get it done. And that person is not there anymore.
My message to unvaccinated Americans is this: what more is there to wait for? What more do you need to see?
My mother came down with the digestive tract virus. The doctor said we could not come unless we were vaccinated. So we went and got our first Pfizer shot, and my reaction was a lot of flushing went off. My throat felt a bit tingly, so I had to take 2 Benadryl. So the second one, my husband went in case we needed to go to the hospital. And I remember the second I got the vaccine, I told him, "Honey, something's wrong." I couldn't talk as well. And I began to ask him, do I sound different? I felt every ball joint was on fire. My feet tingled all the way. My hands couldn't grip well and still aren't really good. Right away, within the next few days, my legs were scissoring in front of me, almost tripping me. I called public health department on about the 10th day. They said, "Honey, give it 6 months. Give it 6 months." In my head, I was thinking, maybe by 6 months, you want to believe they're the medical professionals. But I was living in a body that the realization was it wasn't. On the 5th month, I was playing tennis, and noticeably the slur in my voice was starting to really come out. And the doubles partner said, "Sheri, if I didn't know better, I'd swear it's a stroke."
And staying with COVID-19, both the AstraZeneca and the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccines have been linked to rare but potentially serious neurological complications.
So the neurologist that my daughter knows real well, there came and they said, I said it happened the moment I got the shot. This is 5 months later. It's not getting better, it's getting worse. He said, I don't know what to tell you. One thing I can tell you is it can't be from the vaccine. So he sent me to a specialist at St. Luke's. She concluded it has to be ALS or PLS. Even though your muscles haven't deteriorated, even though your EMG was neutral, negative, even though your genetic test ruled out ALS, it has to be.
My husband had ALS and died with it. And I knew what ALS was because I'd lived it. I didn't see that in her. I know that she was stumbling, and I know that, but it all came on at one time, right after she had the vaccine. And it got worse, just kept getting worse. With him, it came over a matter of years. I saw his hands, it would hit his muscles and things like that wasn't bothering Sheri that much, and I just knew it wasn't.
How do you explain it to a doctor when you're still for a little bit walking and kind of looking normal? Because I worked at it. What was simple became hard.
We didn't want to just lose hope, but our hope was dwindling. And that's when she found Dr. James. And I don't know what we'd have done without that. It was the first time that we'd had hope in a long time.
Yeah, so I'm an ICU physician. So in the early days of COVID, I actually was working in the ICU, and I volunteered to go to New York City to treat people in the ICU. And that was for two reasons, really. One was to provide relief to the people who were out there who were understaffed. And the other was to learn how to treat COVID and bring that back to the Midwest without having to go through the journals and things like that. So it was to learn to treat COVID as effectively as possible, as quickly as possible.
The federal government has opened applications for its vaccine injury support program. It provides compensation to people who are diagnosed with rare but serious conditions after receiving a COVID vaccine.
The term vaccine injury with the doctors that I'm working with now, people I consider my colleagues, it's actually a really diverse group of illnesses that we're seeing now. We're seeing some clinical patterns with that, but anybody who got the shot and now is having side effects, right? Symptoms they didn't have before the shot. And they kind of fall into two main buckets that you hear about. So one is the cardiac things. Myocarditis is the one that gets most of the headlines. But really what I've found is the neurologic issues, such as Sheri had, that's another huge bucket of people. And when I listened to her story, I didn't know what we could accomplish. So I had no doubt it was a vax injury. I had no doubt I knew how to treat spike toxicity, but I had never seen anybody with her exact symptoms. And I knew that hyperbaric was really good for neurologic issues. And we'd had a COVID patient that we had treated and saw some dramatic turnaround. So I said up front, I don't know what to expect, but here's what we're gonna try. And I created a roadmap for her.
The very first hyperbaric treatment, I had 2 toes that had gotten numb through the course of time. I could feel them the moment I got out. I also didn't realize my digestive tract. Don't cry back there, I can hear you. I could tell my yeah. That my digestive tract hadn't been working for a year. No gurgling in my belly. No feeling the sensation of drinking cold or hot for almost a year, and realized, wow, what You don't know what you didn't have until you get it back, and you're like, wow. From that moment, we knew we were on track. The following week, I did a IV vitamin infusion that totally unlocked my hips. It was amazing. So I haven't had this since that moment at all. Oh, it was a miracle.
I tear up still. I want her to be well. I want her to be able to get on with her life. And she just refuses not to. You know, we have to say, hey, slow down a little bit, you're gonna fall. She said, nope, I'm going. And I think even her physical therapy instructor sees that in her. But he says that's the thing that's gonna bring her through.
I remember the day she came busting in our office without her walker. That was a pretty big day that we celebrated with her, and moving to her crutches was a huge, we look for those milestones, right? Of course, I want to go to her tennis match. That's my plan for her, so.
My tennis rackets, tennis bag is hanging ready to go.
My faith is restored in doctors like Dr. James. I know they're out there. But where my faith is lacking is in what we currently have is our medical system and what they're asking the majority of us to do, including those who are on Medicare. Forcing everyone to get a vaccine when there were no legitimate tests. They rolled this thing out pretty quickly, and a lot of it, I think, was based on the fact that there were billions of dollars to be made here.
It seems to me early on, there was an intentional, very comprehensive suppression of early treatment in order to promote fear, suffering, isolation, hospitalization, and death. And it seemed to be completely organized and intentional in order to create acceptance for and then promote mass vaccination.
So I guess I am the experiment. I treated 2,000 patients in the ICU under the NIH protocols, and most of them didn't walk out. And then I treated 4,000 patients with early treatment and very sick patients with stats in the 60s and 70s, and all but 20 of them are alive today. So that's a 0.5% mortality in an extremely high-risk population. So I've seen it with my own eyes, so there's nothing anyone will ever tell me that that didn't work clinically. I have the expertise and the clinical background to be able to share my experience.
I definitely would not have had the vaccine. I don't think anybody should have it. And if anybody is in my shoes and has any issue from the inside out, get help from a functional doctor and don't give up hope.